Hi, it's Amanda Lee from Sugar Cake School, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to make these beautiful pulled isomalt shards. They are the perfect addition to jazz up any cake design. If you want to learn how to make these super easy chocolate fans, as well as how to get a smooth finish on your buttercream cakes, I'll include the link to all of that down in the description box below. If you enjoyed this tutorial, definitely hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. Let's jump on into our tutorial. Now, whilst isomalt sugar is such a fun and beautiful way to decorate our cakes, it is really important to understand that it can be very dangerous when it is melted. So under no circumstance should you ever touch or allow isomalt in its melted form to touch your skin. When it is melted or melting or in hot liquid form, do not touch it. Do not allow it to come into contact with your skin. Now, I do recommend having a bowl of ice water next to you just in case you have any little accidents. Please do take a lot of precaution when working with hot isomalt. Do not touch it and take extra care to prevent yourself from any minor or major accidents when working with this medium. So to make our isomalt decorations, we're going to be using isomalt nibs. And so I use isomalt nibs because it's a lot quicker and you also end up with a much clearer product. Now you can use isomalt crystals and follow the manufacturer's instructions on the back of the packet to cook the isomalt crystals down. You have to pre-cook it before it actually becomes what this looks like, which is isomalt nibs. Normally you would cook it up to its temperature and then cool it down. You would set it, break it up into little pieces, and then essentially you end up with something like this. Now, depending on whether your saucepan is clean or whether you do it to the right temperature, you tend to end up with a bubbly or yellowy product. And so I highly recommend sourcing isomalt nibs because it's just a lot quicker, a lot easier, and you end up with a better decoration. And so I'm going to melt this down and it's going to take quite a few bursts. And so I'm going to do it in increments and then mix it and check it in between because I do not want to take this too far as well. It's really important that you warm this down in a heat-proof vessel. So I'm using a heat-proof glass jug here and I'm going to melt it down in the microwave. So this has been in the microwave for 1 minute and you can see here that the bottom is starting to melt and there's still some undissolved isomalt nibs in there. Now I'm not going to mix this and I'm definitely not going to let it go anywhere near my fingers. This is very hot. You do not want to touch isomalt in melted stage at any point. It's going to lead to serious burns. And so take so much precaution when you are working with isomalt or any hot sugar for that matter. So I'm just going to swirl this around. And just doing that helps to distribute any heat spots that might be in this jug. And then I'm going to go back for 30 seconds. I'm going to check on it again. I'm going to keep microwaving it for 30-second increments until it's completely liquid, completely dissolved. And so here is my isomalt completely melted down. It took about another 1.5 minutes for it to be completely liquid. And so I'm going to go in and add a little color here. Now you can actually leave this clear uncolored, but I want to have a tiny bit of color going into my isomalt. So I'm going to go in with a very small amount of sheeny pink. This is called pink grapefruit. It's got a little bit of a pearly effect to it. And then I'm going to add a little bit of silver. I want some form of metallic to go into this. So again, I'm just adding very little. I'm just going to give it a swirl and see how that takes on the effect, the color. So I'm going to go in with the tiniest drop of pink. Now remember, you can always add more color in, but you can't take color out. So be really scant with the amount of color that you put in to start to make sure that you're happy with the color. So I'm really happy with how this is looking. I'm going to pour it onto my heat-proof mat. Now it's really important that this is a heat-proof mat, not baking parchment, and you want it to be the kind that sticks onto your bench top. Now whilst that is losing some of its heat, I'm going to go ahead and put on 2 layers of food-safe gloves. Now what would be even better than this would be to put on 1 pair of cotton gloves and then a layer of the food-safe gloves on the outside, because that is going to conduct more of the heat and protect your hands. But this is also a decent alternative. Now we want to be really, really careful not to touch this whilst it is very hot. And so the way to test the temperature is to actually use a kitchen tool and a spatula and just pick it off and fold it over. And you'll see here it starts to piece together. And once you're able to pick it up, that's when you're able to start pulling. So if it wants to stick to your kitchen tool or your spatula, then it's not quite ready. You want it to sort of piece together and be something that you can pick up. So I'm just going to let this sit here for a little while. You can do this. Again, we're not touching the Isomalt directly whilst it's at this stage because it's going to be too much heat. It might burn through the gloves and affect our hands. So I'm seeing here it's starting to piece. It's got that beautiful light pink sheeny color, which is exactly what I wanted. Okay, at this stage, I'm happy to pick it up now. I can see it's starting to pull. And so I'm going to take 1 piece of this in my hands and I'm going to start pulling it like so. It's just warm now, feels warm through my gloves. And so I'm going to pull and start shaping it into long strands. And it's still quite sticky, but I do want to work with it at this stage. I'm going to start making some really organic looking shapes and setting that down. And you want to work with the stiffest piece. If a piece is still quite warm, just leave that on the bench and work with that later. You can pull it apart to make some wider pieces. And so this is how you would do it if you wanted to create some really basic pulled Isomalt pieces. I'm going to use some molds later on and show you how you can set it in different ways. But here we can actually pull it and create some really long strands and long pieces. Now this will set really, really quickly. So you do want to work as fast as you can. These are all pretty much set right now. So if you try and pull them more, it's actually going to break on you. The more you pull and fold the Isomalt pieces, the lighter it gets. That's because more air is being incorporated into the piece. See that beautiful sheen? And so you can even twist it like this, and that creates a different motif. We want to create really organic shapes, which we can work with to apply onto our cakes. So even while setting it on the bench, I'm going to curl it around, try and create as much interest as I can from the pieces. You'll start to feel it giving a lot of restraint, and that means that it's starting to set. So you kind of have to decide on your pieces and let it sit there on the bench. So these are my pieces. I'm just going to let this set completely. It'll probably take about 4 minutes, maybe even less. And then I'm going to pick them up, move them to one side, and then start making more. So if at any point of time your Isomalt starts to set in the jug or your heat-proof bowl, simply pop it in the microwave for about 30 seconds to melt it down. It will come back to the right melty consistency. And so you can keep making your isomalt shards or isomalt decorations rather until all of this is finished. If there are any loose bits of set isomalt, you can even just pop it back into the jug and re-melt it. That is the beauty of working with the isomalt in this stage. So I'm going to show you how to create more movement in your pooled isomalt pieces. I'm going to be using some silicone molds here. I'm not actually going to use the shape of these molds. Any silicone molds or sheets that you have with some sort of shape or bump, you can actually use those. So I'm just going to show you how I use this in a multi-purpose way to kind of set my isomalt shard so that it has more curves and more movement to them. So again, I'm going to pour my melted isomalt onto my heatproof mat, and we're just going to let this set. So you do not need to use this. I showed you before how you can just set it on the mat. However, some of the pieces you'll note have some flatness to them. So if you set it directly all on the mat, because of gravity, a lot of the pieces are going to look flat, which is not necessarily a bad thing because it still looks fantastic and can be used to decorate your cakes. But if you want to have more curves and more movement and shape to them, then it'll be a great idea to use some sort of silicone mold. It does not have to be spheres like this. It can be anything. It can even be those cake pop ones, the cakesicles. You can just use them, anything which has a curve, to set the isomalt on there so that it has a little bit more shape and movement. And so you can even add color to the isomalt at this stage, some luster dust if you wish. And so whilst it's sitting here, I can go ahead and put a little bit of color on it, and then we can just start checking whether this is reaching the right consistency for us to start pulling. And it's so close. Working with things like isomalt or chocolate, it's very much to do with the temperature, because the temperature affects the consistency. So this is starting to look right. So I can start to pick this up now and pull it. And the more I fold and pull it, the more air is going to be incorporated. It's still very warm, but not dangerously warm. It's just a workable warm through the 2 layers of gloves. I'm not going to use this whole thing. I'm going to split it into a smaller piece and start pulling. And as I pull the pieces, you want to start shaping them into shapes that you can use on your cake. For the smaller pieces, I'm going to set them on this mound, and you'll see it gives me that nice curve. And you can pull them sideways too to create pieces that have more volume to them. And it's very much a touch and feel process. The pieces are going to move in ways that you don't really expect. So it's about working with it to find shapes that you can use to decorate your cakes. So this piece is getting quite stiff now, so I've got to be quick and start working with it. I want to create a larger piece with this. It's really good to have a variety of large pieces and smaller pieces, so you've got lots to work with when you decorate your cake. So just use the shape of the silicone molds to set it in very interesting forms. This tiny little piece here, oh no, I cracked it. So I tried to shape that, but it was too stiff, and that's what happened, it snapped. But I'm still going to hang on to this little piece because it's still quite beautiful and I can still work with it. So any broken pieces, do not throw them away, or you can just remelt them in your pot of isomalt again. But a lot of the pieces, even if they do snap, they can actually still be used as decorations. They're very beautiful. And so here are some of our Isomalt pulled decorations. They have just had about 30 minutes to completely set. And so you really want to be placing this onto your cake just before it's about to be delivered or picked up. Now, Isomalt, whilst it is more stable, less hygroscopic than regular pulled sugar, it still will want to attract moisture. So sugar really loves moisture, and so after a while it will go sticky. And so whilst isomalt is the better option than just making pulled sugar, you do want to be aware that it will go sticky if you put it in the fridge. And so you really want to put these decorations on at the last minute, as close as possible to delivery or pickup. And so if you are not going to be using this, then place it in an airtight container, and you can use some of those moisture absorbing packets if you have them. You want to try and keep these away from moisture as much as possible, so keep them in an airtight container if you're not going to be placing them on your cake straight away. I would be making this on the day of cake delivery or cake pickup. I wouldn't really be making them in advance. To attach my isomalt decorations, I am just pressing them into my buttercream cake. I also use some additional buttercream that I place inside a piping bag, and I just pipe that in blobs really wherever I would like to place my isomalt shards. I do not want to pipe on too much additional buttercream, as it might be visible through or around the decorations, so I try and pipe on only what I need, and I try and get it hidden behind the isomalt decorations. Do know that it is inevitable that you are probably going to break a few of them in the process of applying all of your decorations onto your cake. Sometimes maybe it's just too heavy, or you haven't pressed it well enough, or it's not anchored on there. And so accidents do happen. I always try and adapt my design, and if a piece is broken, I just try and use it in a different way or apply it in a different position, and it all comes together so beautifully. If you want to learn how to make these chocolate fans, which I included in this design as well, the link for that is in the description box down below. Now, as for storing this, you do not want this cake to be in the fridge too much or too long after applying the decorations. Just for a short while, just to set the buttercream firm is fine. However, soon after, you probably want to deliver the cake or have it picked up ready for its final display or to be consumed. So there you have it, our pulled isomalt sugar decorations. So magical, so mystical when we use it to decorate our cakes. Thank you for joining me in this tutorial. Remember to hit that like button and to drop me a comment down below. For more tutorials just like this, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you're not missing out on all of the incredible new content that we will be releasing.